Hello, Mark Crossfield here, and today quite an interesting video around golf shafts. I'm quite known for doing some videos that stirred people up a little bit about golf shafts. So Nippon offered a chance for me to challenge their shafts in reference to weight rather than flex. All my videos in the past have been more on flex. This is more to do with shaft weight. We've got data from myself and Coach Lockie hitting some very different weighted irons, all the same irons, all the same flex, but very different weighted shafts. I've got some data on the shafts here, so it's going to be a little bit of a data intensive video, but it's an interesting one. Let's get stuck in. So I'm going to show you some of the results from the test I did using the Nippon shafts, really testing as much as I can some weight characteristics to the shaft, so much heavier to much lighter. So I started with the Zealous 7. Zealous 7, all in stiff flex, remember they're all the same flex, is a 77.5 gram shaft, carrying it 154, peak height was 32 yards, it was launching at 20 degrees. So I then went to a much heavier shaft. I went to the Modus 3, but I went to the heaviest one at 124 grams. So I've gone from 77 grams to 124 grams. Now going to a heavier shaft, I would expect possibly a little less spin, maybe a little less distance, and maybe a fractionally lower ball flight. It felt more like I would lose it to the right, where the lighter shaft felt like I could hit it both ways, maybe left and right is the feelings I got. But the actual data, I carried it 155 to 154 with a lighter one. So next to nothing in it, actually went a little bit further. It did go slightly lower at 31 yards to 32, only 1 yard. All shots were played with stiff shafts and all with a 7 iron. I was using the Ping I-Series irons for this test. Spin was around 100 revs difference, so slightly less spin in 124 gram shaft in the Modus 3. And launched 19.8 compared to 20.4, so very similar numbers. Now look, my dispersion with the Zealous 7 was 9.3 on average to the right on the grouping of shots, where it was 4.7 to the right on average with the heavier shaft. And the heavier shaft did, to me, feel like I could be more accurate with it. But then, me being the skeptic I am, I wanted to retest the Zealous because I felt like I was getting more and more in tune and more and quicker almost in my body as I hit more shots. So I went back to the 77 gram shaft. My distance increased slightly, so strike might have improved a little bit across the face, 159 in distance. And look what happened to my dispersion. It came right in, it came right down to 1.6 average right. If we look at the flights there, you can see the red ones there, all pretty evenly dispersed, where my yellow ones at the start were much looser with the light shaft. I reckon that was much more to do with me warming up than the shaft, to be honest. In the Zealous 7, 6,200 revs to 6.1, so again it spun that fraction a bit more. Peaked height of 33, so 2 yards higher now than the heavier shaft, so kind of all making sense. Just the dispersion came in as I got used to that shaft a little bit more and felt more comfortable with it. So then I thought I would go to the Modus, I've got it down here at 120, which is now the 14 gram shaft, 114 gram shaft, so still heavier than the 77 gram shaft, so not quite the heaviest, but still considerably heavier than the first shaft I hit. And it's 5.9, spin came down 32, slightly lower launch, 156 in the carry. So for me, from the different weights and shafts, it was very much a different feel. I did feel like I could be more accurate with the heavier shaft, but I couldn't work out why that would be, which is why I had to retest. And then if you look at the flights there, apart from the first test, the others are all bunching very closely. Not much to really pull out of those different weight shafts for me. The biggest thing it shows me, which it did on the other shaft videos that I've done, that it didn't really make that bigger effect on me. It made a bigger effect on the feelings, more than I could squeeze out of any of the numbers. And what I was squeezing out of the numbers was around 100 revs, those kind of things. So for the player really trying to dial in, absolutely the weight shaft certainly had the biggest effect on me as a feeling and a little bit on the data, more than flex will. And most of the major manufacturers will tell you that flex is not relative to speed like so many people think it is. Where weight was having some very different kind of feelings for me and outcomes in the data. I was able to bring the spin slightly down with the heavier shaft over the lighter ones, those kind of things. Now we went on to Coach Lockie, so I got him to hit some. And I got him hitting the Zealous 7, the 77 gram one. Then I got him hitting the Modus 3, which was the 124 gram one. And then I got him back hitting the Zealous as well. Look what happens to Coach. This is really interesting. Which is why it's so player specific when it comes to shaft feel, players' expectations of it. His dispersion with the Zealous 7, the lighter shaft, 77 gram one, was 5 left average. Where with the Modus 3, the 100 and where is it there? The 124 gram, the heaviest one, he was averaging 5 to the right. And if we look at the flights, so we're looking at what numbers here? The yellow to the greens. Green, relatively good bunching with the heavier shaft. The yellows, you can see some real wild ones in there. And if we go to Coach's club data, his average face to path was 1 closed to a 0 path with the light shaft, and he was always, as he hit the shots, was expressing how the light shaft felt like it was just too floppy. He was rating it to almost flex as well, which it wasn't. They were all stiffs. It felt harder for him to control that light shaft. He felt more accurate with the stiffer shaft. With the heavier shaft, which is he did on the data there. You can see, I mean, the first shot, which you can see went way left, which is that one red line there highlighted. He's hit that with a face which is averaging 6.4 closed to a path, where if we go to the heavier shaft, the Modus 3, all the face to path numbers are open to the path, none are closing. So he felt like he was going to hit it straight to slightly just push it out to the right, which is where he'd like to see his eyes not turning over too much. So he was really kind of loving the heavier shaft over the light one, like I said earlier, player specific. So I got him to retest the light shaft, and yet again his dispersion in the pinks was more to the right than the greens. He was averaging 10 to the right, where his closest dispersion was with the heavier shaft. He was actually hitting the lighter shaft lower, 32 compared to 35, but he did have a miss it in there at 29 peak height. He was spinning the lighter shaft considerably more. He's going up to 400 revs. Even though on the first test he spun it less, which was interesting. You can see how strike is completely changing and face the path delivery is changing all the numbers. It was undoubtedly for Coach, he would never not use the heavier shaft. He would have to turn off all feelings to go more with that lighter shaft over the heavy one. I think the most interesting point here for me when it comes to shaft, certainly when we're now talking weight, you got to remember, as I keep saying, all of these are stiffs. Don't get confused with the flex. They're all stiff shafts. The flex isn't going to be so relative to speed like so many feel. It's going to again be relative to how you pull on the shaft, the feels you get through the shaft, which could affect this data. Coach was much more unable to override his feelings and deliver, where I'm better at delivering any club at a certain point. I'm better at just kind of tuning into where the face is and not feel that shaft or let it override my outcome of result, where Coach was finding it much harder. So it came for a fitting situation for him. Undoubtedly you would go not only with the data but his feel. It came to a fitting session with me on the shaft. You would be hard to use the data. It would be much more what I'm feeling, and I did like the feel a bit more of the heavier shaft, but there was a part of me that quite liked the feel of the lighter shaft. Yet again, another shaft video. There will be with shaft where so many people think they're definites. I think even the manufacturers would want you to not think so much in definites and think much more of you get out there and get testing and hitting and trust your feelings a lot more. Again, all the same flex. This is purely shaft weight talking. For both of us, the heavier shaft felt easy to hit target. Let me know what you think. Post comments down below. Have you tested, or have you got certain feelings about heavier and lighter shafts in your irons and even in a driver? And have you seen better or worse results? I would love to know. As always, I hope the shaft flex isn't rocking too many boats or shaft weight video, as it often does. Feel for me still the overriding factor in this all, but you can see there are some performance gains, so making sure you get the right shaft that feels right for your game. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Periscope, all the normal social places. Also, come and visit my new website, markcrossfieldgolf.com. See you over there.